inside my soul. I got a feeling that this is gold. I do, I do, I do.
Alright, I'm back with yet another audio visualizer tutorial, and the reason I'm making this one is because the add-on and script that I have used in previous audio visualizers and previous tutorials like this, it has stopped being developed by Geethiox, and so it no longer works past, I think, Blender version 2.73, whereas this one has been in development since Blender 2.71, still works for the current version of Blender, which right now is 2.77, and will either likely continue to work for future versions or be updated to keep working. I'm also going to just explore, I guess, other ways that I can make an audio visualizer than the standard methods that I've used, so it's not going to be just a breakdown. This might be a longer video because I'm just going to sort of have fun and see what I can do, I guess. So feel free to follow along, but the initial way to use the visualizer should be covered pretty rapidly. So the things you'll need for this are Blender, which is free, the add-on, which there will be a link in the description, which should take you to a page and you can just download that. That's also free, and then an audio file, which may or may not be free. First thing that you need to do is delete everything except for the camera. And we're going to split the window up here at the top right. We're going to go down here to the bottom left and change it to the text editor, hit open, and then navigate to wherever you saved it. It should be called improved_avis.txt. This is the add-on script, by the way. Yeah, open the text block. I'm going to press T to hide the toolbar right there. And right here, this is really the only part that we need. So pretty much what happens is just plug in the file name, file path of whatever song you're using, and then it does all the work. There's not a graphical user interface, but honestly I don't really care because it works and it's not that hard to use. So right here, file name, I just open that up in my file browser. It's probably the fastest way to get to it, is just navigate to wherever you have it rather than, I don't know, any other way that you'd get it in there, but yep, I just copy the name right there, and then the file path, I'm just going to click up here, copy that, and whoops, path goes here, as it says. Make sure you get the extension for the file name as well. This right here is pretty crucial. It says always use 2 backslashes instead of 1. I'm not sure why that has anything to do with the way that the Python script text editor window I'm in, the way it interprets the backslash character might be like a line break or something like that. Anyways, just put 2 throughout all of this stuff like it says right here. So then the next thing we're going to change right here is delete sound in sequencer. We're going to change that to be false because right now we don't have any sound in our audio sequencer, our video sequence editor. So if we leave that true, it'll give us an error. This is really useful though if you do in fact have audio, like if you were to run the script multiple times, it will automatically delete the new one, and then this next one right here says add sound to sequencer, and I'm going to leave that as true, so it'll take whatever audio file is in the path and file name that you specified up here, and it'll just copy it in, which is super helpful. Start frame I'm going to leave at 1, bars I'm going to leave at 64, but that's because I'm going to duplicate them, I think. Of course you can play with whatever values you want. Height scale I'm going to leave that as 8, that's the vertical scale of the bars as it says. Width, I'm going to change that to 0.4 because I think that's going to look better, and the x distance, which is the space from them apart, I'm going to change that to 1.0. Right here it says radial. It automatically can wrap the array around a circle, or not the array, the visualizer around a circle, which is super helpful. I could make a video showing, I guess, another method of doing that if there's interest for that, but it's really really easy, automatically built in. So I guess just suggest that if you're interested in that. From here, I think we're just going to hit run script, and this should take a while, but hopefully it'll take short or long depending on how fast your computer is, but I'll be back once it's finished. Okay, I'm back. It just finished. It only took a couple seconds or minutes. I wasn't sure, so I just wanted to pause it. Sorry if I'm going a bit fast. This is like the 3rd or 4th time that I've recorded it because of mic errors and stuff like that. So I just want to cram it in because I know how fast or how long it'll take, and I'm trying to make it faster. That way it's not a super long video. So right now it doesn't look like there's anything, but if you just scrub through like that, you'll be able to see there is stuff. If you press Alt-A, that'll actually play the audio. It's pretty loud. I'm actually going to go over to the video sequence editor right here, press N to open up, I'm not sure what this bar is called, but I'm going to drop the volume down to like 0.2 for now. because that is really loud and I don't want to hear it right now every time that I scrub through the video. So just going to drag that over. Right, and now I'll just jump over here to the middle, and you can see it's really big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything. That is not everything. Make sure you grab everything, Peter, except for the camera, I guess. And I'm going to drag it over to about the center, and then I'm going to hit Control Alt Numpad 0 to place the camera where I am to the current view. It snaps it to the current view. I'm going to drag this over. I'm also going to grab all of these things and scale it down, not everything, not the camera, just scale it down so it's not super huge, because otherwise the camera will clip and it'll be gross. So I'm grabbing the camera, and then I'm going to press G and then middle mouse wheel, and that'll let me zoom in or out like that. And then I'm going to reposition it right over here, zoom in a bit more. Actually, not going to zoom in because things are going to take up like half the space. So what I'm actually going to do is grab this. Ooh, that got messed up when I scaled it, didn't it? That is a problem. So I'm going to Control Z until it's no longer flipping into itself like it was. Yeah, alright. So be careful how much you scale it, because I don't know if you saw, but in between here, these things are overlapping, and that could be ugly, especially with the ideas that I have going forward for what I want this to do. I don't want them to clip inside each other, so I'll just reposition the camera. I don't think we're too far up that it will clip badly at this point in time, but if it does, then I'll address that. Right. So now the next thing that we're going to do, this is kind of a pain, but if anybody knows a faster way to do this, please let me know. We're going to go through and we're going to click every single one of these and change its pass index from 0 to 1. That's so that we can use each of these as a mask to reveal an image below it. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. And something that I thought could work is if I just hit like Control L and link like the object data, which is technically what this is considered, I guess. If that would like make them all whatever the active object is, like if, let's see, this one right here, and then I shift click to add that one, and then if I hit Control L to make links between the object data, this one is on pass index, and what I was trying to do is make this one as well, and that way I could just select them all. But it does not work like that. So if anybody knows a faster way to do that, please let me know in the comments, because all the times that I've made this video or done this method before, this takes a painfully long time. So especially if you have something more than like just 64, this is pretty tedious. So I'll get back to you as soon as this is finished. Alright, I am back. I just did all of these. As you can see, all of them are set to pass index of 1. The next thing that I'm going to do is press Z to leave wireframe mode, select one of them, and we're going to give these, change over to cycles render, whoops, my bad. I'm going to give these a really dark diffuse, and while we're at it, we're also going to change the world also to a really dark color, not total black, because that might look bad. Maybe, we'll see. Just really dark. I don't want it to be brown, but rather than using lighting, we're just going to have it be colorful, and that'll at least speed up the render times, I guess. We'll see. So yeah, over here, I gave this, excuse me, little widget thing right here, that one color, so I'm going to press B to box select everything, and now if we hit Control L and link materials, you'll be able to see all of these have the thing that we want, the material. So the next thing that we're going to do is duplicate this, so select everything, and then hit Shift D, and I'll lock it to the y-axis and bring it up probably about here. I'm trying to match this distance between the top and that one right there. And then we're going to hit R to rotate, Z to lock it to the Z-axis, and then 180 to rotate it 180, oops. RZ 180 to rotate it 100 degrees about that axis. So now if we scrub through here, you can see we sort of get this mirror effect, and I just want to make sure that it never flips inside itself. I also want to bring these closer together, so I don't want them to touch because that would look bad-ish, but I also want them to, that's not what I want. I also, why is it going that way? GY, I guess. If I match it up with the camera, and then if I hit GY, you can see down here at the bottom left, right there, it'll tell me, well, you're not going to be able to see it, but right above my cursor, it tells me how many units I'm moving. That way I can get it consistent. And I think we'll just do 2. So then I'll deselect all of those by pressing A, grab this, do the same thing, ooh, not that, GY, pull it down until it's right about there, GY again, move it up 2. Alright, now if we scrub through, it's come pretty close to touching, but they don't ever actually touch, and that is what I want. Maybe even one more, GY, and then move it up 1. Do the same thing with everything up here, GY, and then -1. Still don't want these to touch, because then they would clip. It might not be that bad since they're just planes. They're not there. They don't actually have any like extrusive 3D values, but I just don't want them to clip and then look ugly in the final render. So yeah, that looks pretty good. The next thing that I'm going to do, I guess we could just do the material for that. So I'm going to quickly render this and see. Can't see anything because they're really similar colors. Maybe, oh, because it's on the first frame. Obviously, you're not going to be anything. There you go. Cool. That's just to make sure that stuff is going on. Next, we're going to go down here to the node editor. And, oh, another thing you need to do is go into render layers and under passes, check object index. That way we'll actually look to see whether or not there is object data, like the pass index we just checked. So what we're going to do here is go to render layers, hit check, and then hit backdrop. And actually we're going to have to render out a full thing just to be able to see. So let this render out. That way we can actually tell in our node editor over here. Great. So I'm going to, not that far, split them up a little bit. I'm going to add a ID mask node. That's going to go up here. Object index is going to go right there. Check that one. Add an image input node, which is going to go right here. And I'm going to navigate to where I have a bunch of pictures, and I think it's called sunset.jpg. Hopefully that's one. I have way too many photos. Awesome. You can use whatever you want. This is just what I'm using. It would look really cool if you do the album artwork, but the song I'm using, album artwork, is just 500 by 500, and we're rendering it to little over or little under. Like this camera is 1920 by 1080, and I believe the image you're using gets projected from the camera. So 500 by 500 would just be a square right here, and then these would just be not being masked or being used as a mask, so it doesn't look good. But if you have either a smaller resolution or a larger image, then it will work the way that I'm intending it to work right here. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your image. Make sure you do a test render to see whether or not it works. So I just plugged in the, I just plugged in the alpha value right here into the factor, the image from the render layer over to here, and then if we hit Control Shift and click on the mix, you should be able to see, yep, alright, and what this is right here, I'm pressing V and Alt V to zoom in and out. Right here, that black one means that we did not check the object index thing, and that's a very easy fix. Everything else though looks the way that I'm intending it to look. So go into 3D view, and it's just one of these in here. Not sure. That one is on pass index 2, and that's not what we want. And then the other one is probably up here somewhere, it looked like. So you just gotta click through until you find one that, oh, there it was, right there. Pass index, drop that down to 2. Give it another test render just to see. Cool, all of them are being used to mask it. Awesome, that's what I want. Alright, so now what we're gonna do is, let me go back into the camera view. We're gonna add a particle system to just sort of float dust to give sort of depth of field like I did. You probably, I'll make sure to edit in what I'm doing, like the final result on the at the intro, so that people can tell what's going on. So you don't have to do any of this, of course, if you don't want to, but this is just, like I said, I'm going to experiment, see if it looks good. So I'm moving that plane over. That is way too big. I'll scale that down on the z-axis because I don't want stuff all the way up and down. Just a little bit above and below, like that. And then it needs to be pretty wide, like that. That way we get particles that like go everywhere, not just like, you don't want it to be so big, and you'll see in a minute once we actually add the particle system. If it's all the way out like here, and particles are just coming over here, that's just using up your processing power to render those that don't actually get, you won't see those, so there's no reason to have them. Also make sure that it's not actually in the frame. Yeah, like that. Alright, so now go over here to the particle system and click new. So I'm just going to drop in some values which I know have worked because this is the not the first take, but feel free to play with whatever you want, more or less. Fewer particles will render faster, but all up to your own discretion. So 2000 for the total number of particles. I want them to start here, and I want them to, or start on frame 1 that is. I'm going to have them end on the duration of the song, and if you don't know what the duration of your song is off the top of your head, it's right here in the video sequence editor. So it's 5072, not 5073, so I'm going to change that to 5072. Lifetime, I'm going to have this be 200, but we're going to double check in a second, and what I'm basing that off of is the time it takes for a particle to be emitted from here to pass through to the end of the camera over here, because they don't need to be rendered if they're like all the way over here or if they're not being seen. So we want them to disappear as quickly as possible, that way we're not using up processing power. Down here, yeah, I believe that's all we need for that. For the render, don't render the emitter because that's this and we don't want to see it, even though it's out of the screen. I don't think it'd make that much difference, but just for future reference, you don't want to render the emitter, at least not for this type of thing. We're going to add a icosphere, and let me pull up the toolbar pressing T. We're going to drop the subdivisions to 1, and I'll just zoom in so you can see what that actually means. The more I increase the subdivisions, the more polygons are added, and since we're going to be emitting 2,000 of these bad boys, we don't want that to be a big number. So 1, because they're going to be really small, it's dust particles. I'm also going to scale it down so it's like about that big. And we're just going to move this off the screen because that's not the one that we're actually going to see. That's just the placeholder, because now if we go down here to duplicate object, use icosphere, and then for the size, we want that to be like 0.8 or 1, and play with that value. And I'm going to increase the random to 1, that way it randomizes the size of it. For field weights, 0 gravity and force 2, that way they don't drop, because I don't want gravity, I want them to just float across. And then force 2 means that they're going to be emitted kind of like rough almost. So if I press Alt A, let's see. I'm going to go into the video sequence editor really quick and mute that entirely because I don't want to hear it at all, right now at least. Yeah, and you can sort of see all these little things that are getting emitted right there, but they're going really slowly. So what we're going to do to fix that is zoom out a lot and add a force field, force field, and we're going to pull it like kind of way up here, because if I just put it at this corner right here, then like everything that's at this corner would just get funneled in, and you would be able to tell like there's obviously a force field right here. And I know that you could just play with the particle system field weights to make it float across the way you want, but this is how I got it to work quickly for me. So we're going to change the strength to -2, if that works. And yeah, you can see they're sort of getting pulled across a lot faster now. It might be a bit too much. And also another thing that you can see is there aren't really any particles from like over here coming, and there's a few, like that one never made it into the shot. So we're going to grab this on the y-axis, bring it down, grab it on the x-axis, bring it over y. Or you can just hit G and then Shift Z to restrict it to everything but the z-axis. Just doing that to make sure like all of these are either like, there's still some that aren't making it over there, so we're going to scale it. So press S, X, G, Y, that way there's fewer over there, G, X to pull it over here, and that way, yeah, there's going to be particles over here in this corner. I hope that makes sense. Those are still moving really fast. Not really fast, but faster than I want them to, so I'm going to change this to like -1. I could also move it further back, but content with the distance that it is from the camera. You can kind of see how like they accelerate as they move across the screen. Still think that's a bit fast. Again, this is all up to you. However fast or slow you want it to be, we'll do negative 0.6. See how that looks. Let me click on this so that I can see the outline of them. There we go. I think that's a good time. Alright, and now that particle right there, what frame are we on? 309. If we go to the particle system settings and we're going to change the lifetime, yeah, it's at 300. Sweet. And you can see like most of them disappear or like they get that far. I know these last longer because that's closer, but these ones at the bottom, like pretty much as soon as they get out of there, they die, in air quotes. Cool. So then the next thing that we're going to do is add a bokeh effect, and the way that we're going to do that is by adding an empty, although it doesn't really even need to be an empty. You could just have it be like one of these. But I'm going to add an empty anyway. We're going to call this empty like DOF for depth of field or something like that. We're going to right click the camera to select it, go to the camera values, change the focus to be DOF, like I just said. And the aperture, you're going to have to play with this. This has to do with the real camera settings, and since like right now the real world size of our scene is like tremendous, like these things, if you change the dimensions to like meters in the settings rather than just Blender units, they would be huge. They'd be like enormous. So the depth of field, this is going to be like an unreal value, but I'm going to set it to 5. Excuse me. And I'm also going to crank the blades up to 5 as well because I want to get some pentagonal bokeh. And I'm going to save this right now because sometimes you might have to relaunch it. And you can see I've already made this tutorial a few times. Yeah, so let's give this, and hopefully we will get some nice DOF effects. Depth of why are none of the dust specks? They don't have a material, that's why. So we're going to right click our parent object that's up here. I moved him away. You could just move him to a different layer wherever, but just somewhere that you can find him again in the event that you forgot to give him material like an idiot like me. So we're going to make this not be entirely white. I want it to be gray. Actually, we'll just see what it looks like if it's like white. Like I want it to be dust, not like or gray like that. And you could give these like a random color or something. I just made it a mission, that way it gets picked up by the camera more. Alright, and you can see like right here, this is for this pentagonal shape. And what you could also do is play with the depth of field. So I'm going to say set that to 7, see how more blurs we get. If that makes it more or less blurry. Let's see. What you do to get more or less speckles is change the size of your emitter right here. So I could scale this up on the z-axis like that. If we scroll it back, and then we have to animate it a bit. That way you get like more particles. There are particles emitting up here as well as down here, rather than that like limited zone that we were in earlier. So I'll wait for those to go in like that and give that a render. See how much blurry or less blurry they are, and they are kind of like that. Let me scrub through a bit more just to get like a nice view of like, yeah, like there's variety in the depth, or the depth of height that they're in, this pentagonal shape, as well as this one right here, which is in the depth of our field is, and so it still looks like a little circle of dust or something like that. So I'm going to leave that how that is. Sweet, sweet, sweet. From there, something that you could do is animate the intro by like having this empty be all the way up here at your camera and then slowly moving down. That way it sort of like comes into focus. I'm not going to do that because I already rendered it out with similar settings to this, and so I want that to reflect how the tutorial actually goes. From here, I don't think we need to give those things a material because we already did that pretty much. Yeah, so from what we're going to do from here is crank up the resolution to 100. leave that how it is, change the output location to be not here, but give it another one. I would call it image 4 or something, because this is the fourth time. Woo! Can you feel the enthusiasm? Oh, really quickly, something I just did was scale that up. G, Shift D, move that, or Shift Z that is, make sure that's out of the frame, otherwise it'd be super ugly. Sampling, I'm going to leave this at like 150. You could increase, decrease, depending on how fast or slow it's taking. I'm also going to hit clamp indirect, change that to 1, because since we're using depth of field, that has to do with how light bounces around in the scene, and depth of field slows it down enough. I'm going to leave my frame rate at 24 just because I'm only rendering out a short bit, because I know that it'll take like 6 days with my computer's hardware to render 5,000 frames at this resolution and that amount of samples, so I'm just going to leave it like that. If you want smoother quality, up the frames per second. You'd also have to play around with some stuff in the video sequence editor. Just know that that will literally double or triple the render time. So from here, we're just going to hit animate. Alright, so it has finished rendering. I'm doing that in air quotes because it already rendered previously. I'm just going to reuse one of those. So what we're going to do here is make sure we save this, hit Control N to reload the startup file because we just want a blank slate for this essentially. Go to the video sequence editor, hit add and then image, and then you're going to want to navigate to wherever you rendered all the images. I did mine to image 3. I should have about 10,000, I think, out of the 5,000. So I just hit cancel. I don't want to do that. Press A, by the way, to select everything in this folder rather than selecting them all one at a time. Yeah, I have 1032. That's like 40 seconds or so. Change up here the end frame to be 1032. Up the resolution because I rendered it at full resolution. I want to see it at full resolution. Also add the image or the sound strip, and that's just wherever you had your audio. Make sure the volume is up for this one because that's where it's actually going to go. Change the output location. Just call it something memorable like output space 333, you know. And then you can change this to any of the movie formats. For some people it just works if you use like AVI or H.264 or Xvid, but those don't work for me for whatever reason. They don't capture the audio as well. If somebody knows why that is, feel free to let me know, but this is what works for me and it works in my previous videos. Hopefully it works for you. So choose MPEG, and then for the format down here we're going to choose H.264, select lossless output because I don't want loss, of course not. And then for the audio codec, choose AAC right there. That'll make sure that the audio just goes in a way that is sensible. And then from here, I think that's everything to do. So just go click animation. This will take considerably less time than rendering the image strip did, because it's just taking the image strip that you just rendered and stitching it together. It'll still take like, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes depending on how long your audio file or your animation is. So I'll be right back once it's finished. Alright, I just finished stitching them all together, so if you go to wherever you rendered it out to, which will be, for me, let me open that up really quickly. I should have that ready. Right here, vid, and then I called it the ever so memorable output 333. There it is, ready to go. Sweet, and it works. Yeah, so if there's any questions or suggestions, if anybody knows how to do that thing with the object pass, free to let me know. If you like this, I guess, more like creative approach rather than a tutorial, let me know. I'd be happy to put out more videos like this. Be sure to check out sirrandalot's channel. He's the guy who wrote the script. There'll be a link to his channel in the description. Thanks, bye. This isn't a phone call. I don't know why I said that.